Yeah, I know. I know Yilmaz is from Turkey. Don't really have time to get into that just now. Just tell Borna to get stripped and get on the pitch. Oh, Borna's in Turkey. Aye, now you mentioned it. Yeah, Borna is in Turkey. I remember that now. Well, in that case, just the backup left back that we got in during the summer. You better tell him get stripped. He needs to get. He gets sent off 25 minutes ago. I knew you mentioned that. He did. He did get sent off 25 minutes ago. Well, in that case, just tell Ben Davies to get stripped. Yeah, I did say Ben Davies. You got a problem with that? How you doing, folks? It's your Fatec. Rangers have been papped out the European Cup yet again. What's that, 58 years or something now? The only thing really missing from our CV, the only thing I really would like to see us do before I die. I don't need it. No, I saw us in a couple of European finals. That was it. That was the stuff I needed. I saw us winning 9 in a row. I really needed that. I would have liked to have won 10 in a row, but I needed 9. We've done other things I can need to do, but the only thing really missing on our roll of honour, I think, is to finally cancel out the fact that Celtic are the only Scottish team to have been champions of Europe, and it's 58 years, I think, now. We'll be chasing that, and I think a lot of us really fancied the chances of Rangers going round that Munich Allianz Arena pitch at the end of this season carrying that big eared trophy. But no, shock horror, it is not to be. Reaction Pod coming to you in association with Gersnet, the Gersnet microphone, and with grown men taking their own advice. I shouldn't have mentioned that thing about Celtic winning European Cup. I'm going to have to try and get rid of the Celtic fans. Grown men taking their own advice. For example, this kind of grown man who was on this kind of pod, maybe kind of last night, maybe after kind of being at Hampden on Saturday and talking about how he'd been to Hampden 147 or 148 times before, and he really knew how to to sort out the traffic and all that, how to get there in plenty of time, and he would say that even though I'm in Glasgow, I should really, even though this person is in Glasgow, he really likes to leave the house an hour and a half before I kick off at Hampden, because that way, although you'll get to Hampden like half hour early enough time, for example, to mince about taking photographs of Lesser Hampden and maybe mince on up the escalators to the the concourse, where you can get yourself a flat diet, zero tasteless Coke and a wee steak pie for as little as £8.05, but nevertheless be able to digest it. Eat it at leisure, and then stroll on into your seat to the sound of Metallica's Enter Sandman. If you were to take that extra half hour and just stay at home, leave home half an hour later, you're never going to make kick-off in time, because the traffic gets worse as it gets closer to kick-off. So, if you've actually said that out loud, and then just like 24 hours later, for example, because you've seen an item is going to come up at the end of the 6 o'clock news, which is like 6:30, and the game kicks off at 7:45, so that's only an hour and a quarter, and there's an item come up in the news about a woman who ran the Olympic marathon in Paris with a broken leg for Great Britain, and you happen to want to see that, and you leave again. You don't like any complaints when you're then having 3 heart attacks and 2 strokes as you yourself kind of hobble on down Cathcart Road looking like a pregnant woman trying to run a marathon with a broken leg. I got in time for kick-off. I did actually see the teams coming down the tunnels. As far as I'm concerned, I see the teams come down the tunnels, down the tunnel even. Although there is multiple tunnels at Hampden. The access tunnels, you've got to have them to be a stadium that's fit to host a European final. The one the players come down, though, if I see them coming down that onto the park at the start of the game, then I feel as if I've got full Anorak value for money from whatever event I happen to be attending football-wise. So I wasn't as much that. It was the fact that I couldn't go for... It's an awkward time, a 7:45 kick-off. Just try to get rid of the Celtic fans. I probably only hate to gloat, and I mentioned the European Cup thing, which is going to make it even worse. So there's a Greggs, isn't there? It's a drive-through Greggs. It's definitely a Greggs. You see, it's just before the bridge over the M74 extension, so that's like a relatively new bridge to an old man like me. It's just opposite the bus depot, and you're heading to Cathcart Road and past the Caledonia Road, the church, which is a beautiful ruin, isn't it? No point in any elbows at any football clubs. It's a beautiful ruin. A neoclassical thing. That's it. A Greek Thompson. I think he completed it, but the guy who actually designed it, he died before he can complete it. I think it was about 1856, which was 100 years before the first European Cup final. That's a competition we're still kind of playing in tonight, but we're not in it anymore. But as you go up that road, there's a Greggs on the left-hand side as you're heading towards Hampden. I'm sure it's a drive-through. It must be a drive-through. There is such a thing as a drive-through Greggs. I've definitely heard of them. The road's mythical, but I try to avoid them for health reasons. But tonight, I wouldn't have time to prepare my tea, and it is £8.5 is a lot for a wee steak pie and a big flat tasteless pint of Coke at Hampden. So for that half the price, I could go in there and get like 3 steak bakes, a sausage roll, and get myself a wee cake. And to save more money, I would make a cup of tea or a coffee, get one of the flask things, one of the flasks that you take to the motor and you put it in the cup holder when you're driving to your work and you have a wee sips at it. to get yourself going in the morning. Well, I could take one of them and I could park as a Rimpey Park in that Greg's opposite the bus depot, just at the bridge or the M74 extension. I don't know, but even if I couldn't get parked in there, I would go and maybe drive down to like Mid Annandale Street or Allison Street, wherever it was I was going to get myself parked, and I would sit in there and I would have it at my leisure and have my dinner, my cheaper dinner at my leisure, then stroll on down to Hampden. How you doing, folks? My name is Alec Anderson. My man infield left a tech and a 9 at my crib. He turned himself in. He had to do a bid of 1 to 3. He'll be home the end of 93. I'm ready to get that paper G. You with me? Mother Funston, right? My pocket's feeling kind of tight. And I'm stressed. You biggie, let me get the vest. No need for that. Just grab and get out the first pocket that's fat, take it to its back. The first pocket that's fat. Is there a pocket that is fatter? Is there a pocket anywhere in this planet that is fatter than the one that's carrying the UEFA Champions League group stage kitty? The kitty that Man City and Bayern Munich and even Tottenham, Chelsea, that have been, for years now, they've been taking, I've got a double Glenmorangie, please. Double Glenmorangie and a bottle of Nuki Brown. Whereas the likes of us have had to take a kind of half pint of warm, flat tenants out it if we're lucky as we go with 7-1 scuddings for Liverpool and stuff like that. But tonight it feels like somebody's actually taken even that little half pint of flat tenants and they've changed it for a Carlsberg, the worst drink known to humanity. But it's not actually a Carlsberg. It's not as bad as that. We're in the Europa League group stages, so it's like a Carlsberg. But it's actually a tenant's lager that somebody's put a fag out in it, and that's all it is. Just take the fag butt out it, and you'll find out you're actually in the Europa League group stage, and it's going to be okay. Give me the loot. Actually, robbing some. That's the only way. Getting a gun and pinning to their head is the only way we are now going to be able to make the kind of money we would have made if we get into the Champions League group stage after Rangers lost to Dynamo Kyiv 2-0 tonight in the second leg of the Champions League third qualifying round. The fourth straight season we have been in this round of this competition under 4 different managers. Steven Gerrard, 2020, 2021, we won the league, so we go into 2021, 2022, and we lose to Malmo 2-1 home and away. At one point at Ibrox, we went a goal up and Malmo were down to 10 men. We'd levelled the tie in aggregate, but we still managed to contrive to lose 2 more goals. Antonio Cholak scoring those goals again. So we bought Antonio Cholak in the following season. Rangers under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst in the same round of this same competition are 2-0 down to Union St Gilloise after the first leg. We'd never overcome a 2-0 first leg deficit, but we did it. Monumental 3-0 in the second leg, and we go in to the Champions League playoff round. And the following season, the season after that, under Michael Beale, a really boring, unimpressive, but nevertheless quite steady win over Servette, 2-1 at home, 1 each in Geneva, and we go into that playoff round again against PSV Eindhoven. Slightly different result this time. And tonight, fourth different manager, 4th straight season. That very same round, we've palpably gone backwards after Philip Clement failed to capitalise on that late equaliser we scored in Poland against Dynamo Kyiv. I thought St Johnstone were going to be the biggest beneficiaries if we've actually won that tie tonight, because we would have to play another huge European tie against, as it turns out, Red Bull Salzburg next Tuesday or Wednesday back at Hampden, and I think that would have meant on Saturday night against St Johnstone, the League Cup. St Johnstone side who I think they put 3 past Kilmarnock at the weekend. If a glancing look at a scoreboard, the memory of that serves me correctly. So they're doing quite well just now, but I think it would have been the boys up there to augment our bench tonight, the high 30s and the 40s, Leon King, Bailey Rice, who else do we have on that bench tonight? Robbie Fraser and Cole McKinnon. That'd be the starting 11 on Saturday night, but I still think there's a good chance, given Yilmaz going out injured and the blow to the morale tonight and just how stretched that really, really weak squad is. I still think there's a really good chance that St Johnstone could be putting us out in the League Cup at the very same stadium in which we won it just 9 months ago under the same manager. If you look at Rangers, you include our Scottish Cup games last season, the semi-final and the final, our record at Hampden now is win-lose, win-lose. Having won our first game of the season at Hampden on Saturday, we've lost our first game of the season, a competitive season at Hampden tonight, and what a game to lose. That was just decimating, devastating. Really hollow, empty feeling. Hampden like a big, when it's no full, and it wasn't full tonight, and that was one of the first signs that things weren't going to go well, never mind the fact that I was in seat number 13 in row P. There has to be seat 13s, everybody else isn't. There's so many more people in seats that aren't number 13. There's no such thing as that kind of as bad luck, Alec. But one of the signs that things were going to go badly was the kind of smattering of Rangers fans on the Celtic end. The North Stand seemed pretty full. The West Stand, the traditional Rangers end, absolutely mobbed. And the Union Bears, what a great display they put on. What a great noise they made. I'm in the South Stand, but so I can't really judge how big a crowd it was in there. But there's definitely empty seats in front of me and to the side of me. So the crowd could be in the high 30s or the low 40s at best. Not a good sign, but it echoes more when it's a bit empty like that. It needs to be packed to the rafters, Hampden, before it does anything other than echo, and it seemed to echo with memories, great Rangers memories tonight. But they were taunting us with the idea that we might never get back to that. And when you have the road back to full recovery from 2012, I always rattle on about the fact I think it will take us a generation, 20 years anyway. So we've got another 8 years to go as far as I'm concerned, but this is one of the moments where you wonder, are we ever really going to properly get there? Of course we will. But that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money we have lost tonight. And we just didn't turn up at all, really. The first half... Let's look at the team first of all. And I was really delighted this morning when Joshua Barry, a bit of an expert, was backing me up, and he I don't think he was specifically backing me up, but he picked the same team as myself. His favoured team, his favoured 11 for starting the game tonight. But I think most of us had done. We were wanting to see Deux Sterling coming in, possibly giving us more kind of grit in midfield, making a kind of flatter three in the midfield. If not, as I was saying, Conor Barron had a wee spell on Saturday against Motherwell when he played as a 6, and Sterling and Diamondi played as 8s, and I've had those numbers confirmed as being after watching Rangers Review. I listened to Joshua Barry, so I'm not very good with the old numbers thing as a position, so he confirmed that was actually right. And we were kind of looking for that. That would have meant Tom Lawrence, who's been playing a lot for a guy who's still really he's always coming back from injury, Tom Lawrence, and he's getting towards the end of his career. So it would have taken the pressure off him. But no, Tom Lawrence did start tonight. Deux Sterling was on the bench. I wanted to see Czerny starting the game. He did not start the game. It was Ross McCausland on the right-hand side. I think that affected the tempo. We couldn't get off to the proper start. Apparently, I haven't watched the game back or anything like that yet. I've just seen wee things here and there on Twitter. Apparently, the manager said that the medical team had decided that Czerny wasn't ready to start 2 games in the trot. So I hope they didn't discover that until after the Motherwell game, because you would have been prioritising this one as the one he started to get that tempo going. I wanted Hefty, the man who did so well in the away leg of this tie in the second half when he came on at half-time in that one. I wanted him to start the game tonight. Scott Wright was indeed dropped, and Hefty did start wide on the left. It was Dessers up front, no other option there. And Jack Butland in goals. We've got Yilmaz and Tav as the fullbacks. With no Leon Balogun, John Suter was going to retain his place. He did, as did Robin Proper, his second start for Rangers, the new signing from 20, who also went out tonight at this stage of the Champions League. And the first half was prissy. I think prissy, that's the word that just keeps coming to mind. Both sides were doing what they were supposed to do. It was like they were saying, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is a bit of a chess match, isn't it? It's a tightly balanced game, a tightly matched game, or evenly matched game. We were going down the sides and putting crosses into the box. Sometimes they were getting cleared for a corner. They're never really threatening properly. They were packing their box when we were getting the ball. When they went forward, they had a couple of opportunities to get in behind. Both were full-backs and didn't make the best of it at all. Made bad choices when they got deep into our box. Been easier for them to score, I would have thought. And it was like, we're going to hit you in a counter-attack and you're going to have most of the ball. But there was that's the lack of Czerny, I think, meant that there was a lack of tempo. You can't just put it down to one player. I think also the crowd would have affected them. It was a kind of not a conscious, but I think it's a kind of inferred protest, a kind of subliminal protest also from almost from the Rangers support, just the way we've been messed about with the whole Hampden thing. It's a dislocation within a discombobulation, within a defamiliarisation. It's the fact we are used to Hampden. We know what Hampden's all about. I'm, and yet now it's different. I keep thinking, I keep telling myself that Hampden, we're going to borrow Rangers' little spell at Hampden. We're going to borrow from all the great moments, the internationals, the great moments in cup finals that we've had, and somehow that's going to lend itself to our performances. But it hasn't. More to the point, it's more the case that we're actually kind of desecrating the memory of Hampden. I'm talking about the M74 extension. I love driving the M74 extension. It's £700 million well spent because it lets me see my favourite city in the world. And a view that you really get of Glasgow. There's not a lot of good views of Glasgow. Glasgow's not a pretty city. It's much better than that. It's no Edinburgh that's totally twee. It's not that kind of rotting sugar thing that Aberdeen seems to be, that kind of silly confection with the granite and all that. It's the best city in the world, Glasgow, and I love it. Even I go down south. I have great holidays down south. Every year go down south at least once and drive back up and M6, hit the M74, and now you can just that bit where you sweep round. It starts to head towards that sweep round onto the M8 where it joins up. The city just opens up and it looks beautiful. And the only other, before the M6, it still seems relatively recent to me, and before that, the only other view, really, the spectacular view you got of Glasgow, and it took me back to a time, it took me back to when I was a kid, and I first realised, I'm going to go for this because it's been a horrible night, and what the hell, it's a State of the Nation address kind of thing. I don't know where I'm going with this, but you don't want to know about the game anyway. You might as well just know how I'm feeling, and that'll sum it up. This is one Rangers supporter talking about how gutting, eviscerating that game was tonight. I've got a young cousin who's about 12 years younger than me, and he's the best ill person in the world. He's really famous. He did something amazing, when he was a kid, when he was like a baby. When he was 2 years old, 3 years old, he got leukemia, and he ended up becoming the first person in the world, David, my young cousin David, ended up becoming the first person in the world to have 3 bone marrow transplants that all failed and yet survived. His sisters got 2, his mum and his dad, and his 2 older sisters, and there was also bone marrow transplants for him, and they all failed. And my aunt and my uncle, it's my dad's one of my dad's sisters. And the guy she married, Dave, Uncle Dave, he passed away a few years ago. He's just a massive influence in my life. Is that one of the loveliest guys you'll ever meet. Is an amazing fella, amazing guy. So the whole family, from Ayrshire. I'm born and raised in Ayrshire, Drawson for me, but there's 3 twins, little mums from Salkits, and Dave is from Stevenson, and they stayed in Stevenson. And it was one at that time, it's kind of 83, remember 83, 84-ish, I would be like 13, 14 years old, and when the news hit that David, I think he was just 2 years old, he had leukemia, it was absolutely devastating, so he's up to York Hill, Sick Children's Hospital, and we've only got one car, and I think the whole family, the whole extended family, there's about 2 cars between us, so it was always kind of shifts of visitors. It was, my dad's got 4 sisters, and my mum's got sitting there. We all would pile up there. I'd go up maybe every couple of weeks. It would work out. All the various hundreds of kids and all that. I was the oldest of the grandchildren in that side of the family, so there'd be lots of support. And I was going to see Rangers at the time. I was just starting to go to see Rangers regularly. There was my addiction already. But I was going in the Stevenson Masonic Supporters Club, which my aunt and uncle, another aunt and uncle were in, and it was from Drawson. It would leave from Drawson. So you're kind of incubated, even though you're getting, you go into Ibrox and would go to Hampden and various away games and that. You're really kind of just going from your hometown in the company of family and other friends from that town up to the games and that kind of thing. I'd be dragged into Glasgow shopping with my mum, as a kid a few times, and I loved it. I loved the Glasgow city centre and what have you. But generally, you kind of Drawson. But this was the first time I'd been, you drive along Dumbarton Road. Remember Lena's Fish and Chicken Bar? I don't know why I would remember that, but I really started to fall in love with the city. I was getting to age. I was just starting to read William McIlvanney novels and the papers of Tony Veitch and Laidlaw and that kind of thing. And you know, Taggart's on the telly, like Comfort and Joy, that kind of era in my teens. I just remember falling more in love with the city itself. You're a young kid, everybody loves cities and all that, but we'd go along to it, and I remember one day, and Rangers had just sacked John Gregg, and you know where York Hill Hospital is, and we were up in whatever floor it was, and David it was looking bleak from a few times. He just didn't think he was ever going to make it. He's got kids of his own now and all that. You know, he's amazing married man and all that. He survived all this. His mum and dad are quite religious, and they just decided at one point it just wasn't happening, and I think they just switched off the life support and said, you know, if the man upstairs is there. And he did. He took care of it, and the wee man, he started making his own, producing his own platelets and all that. So that was it. You know, I mean, it was an amazing thing. He's got a medical history apart from anything else. My wee cousin, and but I remember one day things were looking really bad, and like my mum and my gran and all that, my dad, man, they're all in the ward next door, like, you know, greeting their eyes out and really worrying. And you're a kid, so I was like 13 or whatever, and I'm standing there and I'm looking over at Ibrox, and I'm looking, and it was raining. It was late November. It had been raining all day. One of the days it never really got light. And I remember looking out over like where the shipyards used to be and all over the city because we were up high. It was one of the top floors at York Hill, and I was in the foyer bit next to the lifts and all that outside, and just looking over at Ibrox, and there was a light on, and Ibrox looked absolutely brilliant, and there's a wee light on, like in the main stand. I'm thinking they're in there interviewing Jim McLean, you know, and we were interviewing Jim McLean for the Rangers job. The move that didn't happen and broke Walter Smith's heart. It had been another 3 years before Walter Smith got to come to Rangers as an assistant. He thought he was going to go along the Ruby Jim. But McLean knocked it back because Rangers was just too big. He couldn't control the whole club. And we got Jock Wallace back in. I was young enough to think that was a great thing, but the crowds that were turning up at Ibrox told me different. No one really believed, and they were quite right as well. But I remember standing there that day and just having that first feeling of, I'm going to live here. This is shit. What's going on just now is shit. But in that, I know that if life's going to be shit anywhere, I want to live. I want to live in Glasgow with life being shit because I need to. I want this, and I love Ardrossan. I love the sea. I love the Clyde estuary, the Firth of Clyde. But I knew that I wanted to live next to the Clyde, more than anything else. And it took me years to do it. I think it's now just. I didn't get up there. I didn't actually have an official address in Glasgow until I was like 27, January 1997. I was a mature student at Glasgow Uni, and I finally got myself a wee address in Glasgow, moving into student accommodation. And so I think my birthday's in July. I was like 27 and a half. I've just turned 55 last month. So I think it could be tonight that I'm finally getting to that moment where I've been a Glaswegian longer than I have been, staying in Ayrshire. I'll always be in there. I mean, I'm an Ayrshireman through and through. Even if I didn't want to be, there's nothing I can do about that. And I'm quite proud to be from Ardrossan. But I stayed just off Glasgow Street as well when I was a kid in Ardrossan. And I think it could be now, it could be this very month that I'm now being in Glasgow for longer than I stayed in Ayrshire. And that's beautiful to me. There's some film, I'm getting really wanky here, and there's some completely wanky film that I don't remember a single thing about. I saw it again when I was in my 20s or something like that, my teens. It could have been like a Kazuo Ishiguro novel or something that had been adapted. And the only line that the protagonist is narrating through the film, and it's this couple, a kind of mixed race couple with really trendy gear on, and they're going to book readings, and they're going to the cinema, and fancy restaurants and what have you. And they say he says something, or she says something along the lines of, "We weren't British, we weren't English, we were Londoners. We're doing all this in London. We're from London, and that's our country." And I just remember thinking, I want to be able to say that about Glasgow and myself. I want to be a Glaswegian. That's what I want, you know what I mean? And it's a daft thing, it's a daft notion. Any kind of attaching yourself to a locale or whatever, it's like patriotism, everything about Scotland's great, everything about Britain's great, everything about America's great. It's nonsense. Everywhere is good, it's good and it's bad, and there's no way I can know everything about Glasgow. And I wasn't born here, but I always wanted to be a Glaswegian. I'm really proud that I've become one. and the only place that could ever make me feel that way I felt for a long time. I love everywhere I go in Glasgow. I mean, I have days, I have weeks where like every day I'm telling myself I love living here. Yeah, I manage it at least once a week. Just walking about, seeing various buildings, and just it's big enough to be anonymous if you want, and small enough for you to have an effect and get involved as well. And Rangers is such a they got me here, and they opened the place up to me, and but so did David, and David's a Rangers supporter as well, so was his dad. But they wouldn't want to be in Glasgow that way. But I got to know like the Dumbarton Road and all that as well, and it made me even more. I need to move here. I need to stay here. And the only way the only thing up until that M74 extension opened, the only other place that made me feel that way I felt that day in 1983, looking over at Ibrox from York Hill Hospital, looking over the sweep of southwest Glasgow. David Bowie's just released Let's Dance, and there was a Chinese family in the same ward, and they would be suffering a tragedy or try to avoid a tragedy as well. But you're a kid, you can't help, you can't help getting distracted by other stuff. And they had a daughter who was like 14, 15 years old, and China Girl comes out, in that video, what have you, David Bowie, and I'm thinking that's her, she's the China, and it's just that time of life where everything, you're like a sponge, you're taking in everything new seems amazing. And the only other time before the M74, it still seems quite a recent road to me, that I felt that same thrill as an adult was when Clydeside Expressway is at the A814. If you're coming for the west end of Glasgow, you come for Clydebank or whatever, and you're driving past the SEC, and you do that, you can be going onto the city centre, but if you want to go south of the river, if you want to get onto the Kingston Bridge, you go off to the left, and you'll know it. It's like a single lane flyover, and it must be the highest flyover in Europe. And it's utterly thrilling because it's utterly ridiculous. It's so dangerous. I think you're supposed to do 30 miles an hour. Everybody does at least 50. It's actually better if you're a passenger in terms of scaring yourself. And I've driven over it so many times. It's a long time since anybody's driven me over that, because you don't feel in control of the car, and you feel as if you go right up over the bridge, and at first you look down to your left and you can see all the traffic going through to Edinburgh, all the traffic heading east. There's so much of it. It's one of those moments that Glasgow really feels like a total metropolis, and it's really, in many ways, Glasgow is a really big town, but it feels like a massive metropolis. You see all the traffic there, and it's the height you are going to on a single, it's like a walkway's width, and one wrong move and you are plummeting to your death. You're going to end up in the Clyde. You're going to end up on a roof of a warehouse. You're going to end up going through the 10th floor of an office block. It's the closest Glasgow's going to have to skyscrapers, and you're above some of them, and you're kind of halfway up some of them on a level, and the city just sweeps past you. And as you go over and it bends round to the right, it's like a roller coaster or something. It's like a big dipper. As you go round and you bend round, again, it looks like you could go over into the Clyde, one wrong move, and then you come down and you get onto that. You get onto that Kingston Bridge, and you carry along that lane that's going to take you to get to Hampden, to get across the river, and you cross that river, and the Clyde is never glowing blue. It's always an undertow of grey, and it's steely, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And you go past Morrison Street or Morrison Road, that big cooperative wholesale building which was built in like the 1890s, and it's all pilasters and more neoclassical stuff, kind of Doric and Ionic pillars and Corinthian capitals, and there's pediments, and there's what do you call it, the kind of gables, Dutch gables, shaped gables and that kind of thing, and domes on tops of towers, and right at the top, that was what is it called, the Life and Light or something like that. It's a statue. It's a gold statue, and it was replaced a few years ago. The old one was falling to pieces, and you can see it. You can see it when you come along that M74 extension, especially in days when the sky is just slate grey. Just a wee hint, the merest hint of blue will light up the gold of that statue, and it's gorgeous. And I used to feel like going to Hampden for international matches, for cup semi-finals, for cup finals, it would be like, yeah, this is the perfect build-up because everything is dangerous and thrilling. That sense that you will lose it all if you lose the game, but you'll win it all if you win it. And that flyover, sweeping around that flyover, I've done it twice in the past few days, and it's gone. That feeling's gone. Glasgow still looks magnificent. Glasgow's still what it is, but that excitement has been taken away by Rangers living at Hampden just now, doing our domestic and European business at Hampden. It's wrong. It is wrong. I thought it would be interesting. I thought it would be a wee bit of an adventure. I knew it was awkward. I knew it was, but not only did we have to map over with season ticket seats, but the continual credit card scheme that we're saying to Rangers, take our money. We don't care where we're playing. Just give us notification. Send us an email telling us when the money's going to come out of our account. But essentially, we'll have the money in our account. Please take our money for any non-season ticket game, competitive game that we're playing, wherever we are at home. And they're saying, no, we can't do that either. You're going to have to go in and find yourself a seat. And we couldn't get the same seats that we'd just been given. We went through the trauma of realising our season ticket was going to get moved to another stadium. But then the next game we're playing, the second game we're playing at that stadium, so many people, myself included, could not get the same seat that they'd just been allocated for the games that are on the season ticket. And so you're going to a place that you're familiar with for big games, you're going to them for domestic games or big games that you should be playing at Ibrox. That's bad enough. You recognise your surroundings, but that makes it worse. It's like, waking up on a Monday and everybody telling you it's a Tuesday. Shouldn't be that much of a difference, but it's a colossal thing. And I'm only feeling it. I was feeling it even though we won on Saturday, and I felt it really badly tonight. This is a horrible, horrible thing. And seeing Rangers going out at this stage of this competition before, but there's an extra, an extra boot to an extra sickening feeling about it tonight. It's kind of cleaned me out, and I'm left just realising that I want to be a Glaswegian so badly, and I had that thing in my head, and I've done it all. And I've gone to, gone to our independent art house cinemas, and going to fancy restaurants, staying in hotels and things like that, going to exhibitions, going to art galleries and blah blah blah, going to private exhibitions, things like that, poetry readings, and done so many of those things. But I need Rangers to be winning. I need Rangers to be okay. I didn't go to see Rangers once in 1991-92 season because I knew we were fine. I knew we were absolutely fine, and I used that opportunity to catch up with my life and get on with other stuff that I needed to do. I don't let Rangers stop me. I don't let a bad Rangers result stop me living my life, but it's always there in the back of my mind. I've tried before. I've had seasons where I don't go to Ibrox, well, no, for 30 odd years really, but I just spend my whole time running about trying to find out the result, and it's just in there. Doesn't matter what I want to do in my life. I just need to know that Rangers are okay. And right now, it's a bit of a worry. I think we will be okay. We always are. If we can recover from everything that happened in 2012, there's no problem. We're going to get past this. But we're in a bit of a cycle now. We're in a bit of a cycle where Celtic get direct access to the Champions League. A lot of it because of mostly our efforts in the Europa League group season. Celtic are winning trebles while playing in the Champions League against PSG and Barcelona and that. I'm not trying to just pettily put down their European efforts. And both the old firm will be in Europe past Christmas this season because the new group stage system for all of the European club competitions means that we'll be playing group stage matches. We'll play 2 of them in January. Because there's extra, we're playing 2 extra games in the group stages this season. Everybody is, but the connotation getting past Christmas in Europe, it's about getting to the knockout rounds after the group stages, and I don't know if we've got it in us to do it again. It's maybe slightly easier for us because we're in the Europa League, but it's evened out by the fact that we've got our squad is just. It just doesn't have any depth at all. It's needing major work, major reconstruction. We wanted rid of all these players. We've got rid of them, but the replacing them is just taking far too long. We just don't have the funds. I don't have a problem with the chairman, really. I don't. I think it's just the undertow of 2012. We had so many cowboys running the club into the ground. I don't include David Murray in that. I think he's made a massive mistake and what have you. But I think Craig White has deliberately run the club into the ground. We wanted Murray. The pressure on him to sell was so great that I can't really be in any way critical of him for selling to White when White was welcomed like a hero. I can't be critical, obviously I can be, you know what I mean, to a certain extent. But the Eastdales and Charles Green, even Dave King, 230 odd tax cases outstanding in South Africa, yet Murray was slaughtered for making an admin error in one of them. One tax case. So I feel as if we've got people who actually support the club and have the club's best interests at heart, and that's the main thing now is it's the manager. I think all we can do just now is continue with the same manager. We have to get past Christmas with the manager who started the season in charge of us for the first time in 4 years, really. Obviously, that's not, if we start losing every game 3-0 in the league or in the League Cup or whatever, then that can't happen. But I don't think it is going to happen. I think Philippe Clement is a man who is going to enjoy the task of rebuilding this squad. He's signed on for the longer term. He does love the club. And have I even spoken about the game? I haven't even spoken about the game. Sorry, that's terrible. The first half, as I say, was really terrible. Tonight, it was really kind of boring. There was no pace to it. I think we had a shot. Did Hefty have a shot that went flying over the bar? Maybe a header at the back post. Ross McCausland get put clean through at one point. A kind of weak ass shot. The goalkeeper turned round the post for a corner to us. Yeah, that was it. And they had a couple of breakaways that they couldn't convert. In the second half, we come out, and Czerny is on the park at this point in time. And Czerny was, when he was doing his warm up in the first half, the manager was out talking to him. I was sitting just behind our technical area, really. And the manager's out talking to him. And I thought for a minute he's actually going to bring on, he's going to take off Ross McCausland in the same way that Ross McCausland come on for Todd Cantwell in that game against Aris Limassol last season. That'd have been too much. It was. I think the whole situation is kind of unfair on Ross McCausland. Basically, he didn't really deserve to go off the amount of effort he was putting in, but yet he just happens to be in the one position where we have a proper quality player ready to come on. So Czerny comes on, but within 5 minutes of him coming on, Hefty's been sent off. So we don't really get to see what Czerny could have done. And I've seen that the fella 2 seats along from us, he had the data, he had the BBC up on his phone, the BBC live coverage, and he showed us the incident. I thought it was Tav getting booked at first, and I thought, oh no, does that mean he's going to miss the playoffs? Because I think he get booked in the first leg. Tav, Christ, if only. Next thing, Hefty's losing the rag, and I didn't even know Hefty had been booked in the first half. My seat was quite far down, so there was some kind of incidents I couldn't really see properly. I'd forgotten that he'd been booked in the first half or what it was for, but there he was going off, and it just looked like an abysmal decision. He just jumped higher than the guy. He come down, and there's a massive lacuna in VAR and the VAR protocols that just because it's a yellow card incident. Remember, we'd suffered the same thing with John Lundstrom, another one of those losers we got rid of. Remember John Lundstrom at Easter Road at the beginning of the last season, the season before? God, the season's flying now when you get to my age. It was Willie Collum doing the same thing with him, a shocking decision, but because it was a yellow card, you couldn't appeal it, or VAR hadn't come in at that point. That's what it was. It's terrible, just an absolutely terrible decision. But I think there's now it's opening up on Rangers Twitter that people don't want to be using that as an excuse, as they're so determined to get into the bold and get into certain players, and maybe the manager as well. And I certainly don't want to use it as an excuse. You've got to prepare for these things. European football was absolutely brutal, particularly at this level, particularly Champions League. So these are the things that happen. We immediately, Dynamo Kyiv, we didn't make any changes straight away. Immediately, Dynamo Kyiv started taking control of the game. They had a good solid 10 minutes with a better finishing, better use of the ball. You could see how they're not at the finished article, how they were there for the beating had we been up for it. They could have put us to bed, but they didn't manage it. And then we rally back. We win a few corners. Tom Lawrence beats a guy, stuff like that. But we didn't really threaten at all. We're so powder puff up front. There was a bit in the first half that I forgot to mention, where the ball gets floated in and Cyril Dessers kind of heads it, and it basically just lands in the keeper's arms. He's kind of, I don't know, maybe in the penalty spot, maybe a bit further back, but he's in the box anyway. And everybody kind of politely applauds, me included, just instinctively, oh, it's an attack, maybe we can get ourselves going here. Because we're still the tie was still level at that point. And you try to get an atmosphere going as well, which just wasn't happening. And it was the boy next to me, who's the same kind of age as me, and he said, Mark Haley would have boom been right through that. You know, and I'm thinking, Mark Haley would have been right through that. You never see Cyril Dessers attacking the ball in the air. You never see him putting his head through the ball the same way you never see him putting his feet through the ball. And he's getting a lot of hassle tonight because it looked like he made a gesture to the supporters, telling them to, get behind the team, I think, after he had lost the ball and a few of them were howling at him. And some of the abuse he takes is just out of order. Some of the abuse any Rangers player who isn't performing brilliantly takes is out of order. But I don't feel like making a big deal of that at all. There's people wanting rid of him because of that. I just don't think that's... If anybody comes in to buy him, I think we'll definitely be getting rid of him. But I could get it tonight because he's putting himself about. He's not getting a break because Danilo's not getting played, and Igaman, from Morocco, he's not ready to play yet. And so Cyril Dessers is having to play every single minute of every game, and then he finds himself tonight, in a 10-man team in a Champions League qualifying tie against Dynamo Kyiv. He's working himself into the ground. Good enough or not, he's certainly given it his all. And he was kind of harshly criticised, I feel, for his performance tonight. He scored a few goals already this season, so I don't have a problem with him. But he's definitely isn't what we need when you think about his inability to head the ball or kick the ball properly. But he was having to lead the line. It was a thankless task tonight. We had pushed Diomande up to kind of support, to give a bit of support to Cyril Dessers when we went down to 10 minutes. It was quite a bold move by the manager, but it ran Diomande into the ground. And the first substitution that we made after obviously Cherny coming on at half time was when Deux Sterling came on. And I remember looking at the clock thinking, right, what time is this substitution? And it was around about the 67 odd minutes. I thought, that's 67 or 68. And I thought, it's 67, 68. You'll remember that one, Alec, because 67, 68 is a season in which Rangers became the first team to beat Celtic after they had been champions of Europe, and Dynamo Kyiv were the team that ended Celtic's reign as champions of Europe. They put them at the European Cup that season. And I thought, maybe that means we can do each other a favour here. Could we nah. They took control of the game. After that, Dynamo Kyiv, they had that. Well, no, we lost Yilmaz, didn't we? 77 minutes. We lost Yilmaz and had to bring on Ben Davies. I think we went 3 at the back after that to replace him. And you went down. I think the fella next to me was saying he was holding his quad or whatever. The stretcher had to come on. And Yilmaz is now officially one of the guys that's never going to be fit for long enough. That's it. He's never been on much of a run. This might be the longest run he's been on fitness wise, and that's it. He's just one of the guys. It's never going to happen. Yet another player who's never going to be fit. So he's got a crisis down the left hand side straight away. But only 4 competitive games into the season, the squad is so weak and the injury problems are still piling up on us. So Yilmaz went off, and then it was within minutes that Dynamo Kyiv broke up the park. The fella cuts in from the right-hand side and he fires it into the bottom corner. The shot was fairly fast. It was very accurate, but I think it takes any blame off Jack Butland as it did go through the proverbial forest of legs to get in there. I think from where I was sitting, John Suter looked to be having a good game in the second half, putting in a few last-ditch tackles. But generally, Kyiv had been kind of more wasteful than us because they did more of the ball than us for most of the second half. I think at that point we put Robin Proper up front and tried to launch it, and from trying that straight from kick-off, they come right back up the park, up the other side, the left-hand side, a wee 1-2, and swept it into the net again. That was it, game done. 82 and 84 minutes, they scored their goals right at the end. Absolute killers, and fair play to them. Before I saw that headline tonight in the news, at the end of the news about the female marathon runner, the news headlines at 6 o'clock tonight were all about Ukraine making incursions, counter-attacking into the Kursk region of Russia, taking on that wedge of the scum that is the thick end of the wedge, the scum that is Vladimir Putin. So all the best to them. They were sitting in the Celtic end tonight. The away fans had been in the Rangers end, Motherwell, on Saturday, and it was the Celtic end of Hampden tonight for the Dynamo Kyiv fans, flying their Ukrainian flags, every one of them. And it reminded me of one of the many times I've seen Ukraine at Hampden, and it was the COVID restricted Euro 2020 games played in 2021, the last 16 match, and I was sitting in that very section. I was sitting in that very bit in the Celtic end. That's the ticket I was allocated as Ukraine scored in the last minute of injury time to beat last minute of extra time to beat Sweden and put themselves into the quarterfinals of the Euros. So I'm getting too used to seeing Ukrainian celebrations at Hampden. But I hung about at the end myself for some strange reason. I was in danger of becoming that very kind of person that I don't like, who makes a big deal of the fact that, oh, look at me, I'm kind of theatrical, posing. Look at me, I'm in pain. My pain means much more than the opposition's victory. It wasn't that. It was like we might, I had these dreams. That we might, the return to Ibrox, which is going to be dramatic enough when it comes around, might be against Real Madrid in the Champions League. That'd be really nice. And now I'm thinking, because if the most kind of caveated, optimistic time for us returning to Ibrox, as per the chairman, is the very end of September, and that is the first round of group stage fixtures in both the Champions League and the Europa League and the Conference League as well. So, maybe if we do get that sorted, maybe this will be the last time we play at Hampden in Europe. And I just wanted to look at it because we've probably scored a goal, we've conceded 2 goals, we've had a red card administered to us, and it wasn't much of I'd been looking so far. I thought it was going to be amazing, kind of mythical, really enjoyable experience, but the atmosphere was dead as a dodo, and the lack of crowd, I think, is a kind of subliminal protest, as I say, to the whole situation. It's just not a nice feeling. It was a horrible thing, and I now hope we are, at least into October before we go back to Ibrox, so that I can see Rangers winning a European game at Hampden. Unfortunately, that will be in the Europa League, I think. Whereas we might have wanted to see Real Madrid coming down the tunnel at Ibrox when we do return there, hopefully, early winter. I'm more concerned with seeing Philippe Clement returning to the technical area than seeing Real Madrid coming down the tunnel now. That's the main concern. Aye. Remember when we tried to form that jazz funk fusion band at uni, and you wanted to call it Shlovsky and the Formalists, and I wanted to call it Victor and the Formalists, and you're like, well, it's more informal to call him Victor, so it doesn't really go well with the Formalists bit. And I said, well, you need to call him Mr. Shlovsky, so it's informal just to call him Shlovsky as well. And I thought, well, it's formal and informal. That's the jazz and the funk, and the bit is in the between is the fusion. And we fell out. We never really formed that band, and we went our separate ways. And I ended up joining the Cream, and you went and played with. The Brotherhood of Man. But the main thing is, it's Viktor Shlovsky and the Russian Formalists, a bunch of critics in Russia in the 1920s. And so it's no bad Russians. I don't mean this is any disrespect to Dynamo Kyiv. They coined the phrase ostranение, and ostranение means, it's like defamiliarization, making the familiar unfamiliar, and that's how art works. If you have that thing, you read a poem, sonnet number 18, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And you think, oh, comparing somebody to a summer's day, I knew they were beautiful, but doing it like that makes it, and the whole thing about if you write it down, then it doesn't matter if you get old, because the poem will always be young. That your young sentiments will be kept in touch. I understand that, and I thought about it, but I never really formed and it makes it unfamiliar, something but it makes it unfamiliar to let you look back on it and see that's art, as far as Viktor Shlovsky and the Russian formers were called, and I was ostranenie. It's a bit like Bertolt Brecht, Brechtian stuff, when it's defamiliar, the Verfremdungstech effect. I remember that kind of thing of making it a bit different, so you look at it from a different point of view and you get something else out of it. But it's no like sonnet number 18 or I wandered lonely as a clown or whatever it is. It's not that kind of poem, that kind of defamiliarisation that Rangers are doing just now. It's more like W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming, or one of the Auden poems that ends with kind of 4 syllables, and the syllables are Nanking and Dachau, and it's not that bad, but it's maybe like David Lynch or something. Mulholland Drive, no I Banda, pas du orchestra, there's going to be no Zadok the Priest, there's going to be no Handel, there's going to be no Zadok the Priest played at Hampden or Ibrox, there's going to be no Champions League music, but Rangers going to Hampden is just, it's exposing how bad the whole thing, how shallow things are at the club just now, how tenuous things are, it looks like we're letting Celtic run away with another 2 or 3 league titles on the back of the money they're going to get from this Champions League group stage. It doesn't always work out like that, and I think we've got a manager who can turn it around, but we're going to have to work slight miracles this season. And if one thing is, the manager now knows, it sounds like he had a problem in that press conference the other day, the fact that you'd be getting, you get 5 million if you win this game, and then it'd be another 2 weeks before you knew if you're going to get like 16 million minimum for the Champions League. And some of the uncertainty is a real killer, isn't it? And it's, well, he knows now. We don't have another European game until the last week in September, so he definitely knows the budget that we don't have now, and that we're going to have to sell players, get them at the door, so we can get new ones in before the end of this transfer window. He knows what kind of player he can afford. But I think he's here for what is now officially a project. Sign Lawrence Shankland. I know it makes even less financial sense now when Shankland's going to be available for nothing in January, but we need, it's no health we're looking for now. We need a sugar rush. We need something that's not long-term healthy. We need something that's just going to pick us all up. Sign Lawrence Shankland. Get him in the door. Do what you've got to do. We need an icon or something like that. Give Hearts, Dessers, I don't care. Just get Lawrence Shankland in the door to give us a rush. I had it all worked out, man. I had it all worked out. I thought it was going to be Ademal Lookman. He scores that hat-trick for Atalanta. It was the Europa League final we're trying to get to in Dublin last year. We were really trying that hard to get to it. And I must say a big shout out if any of you are still listening to Colin that I bumped into for the second time tonight. Lovely fella. I met him for the first time in the main stand at Ibrox when we get put out by Benfica. We beat by Benfica at Ibrox in last season's Europa League, and I was saying to him, and he was digging me up for the thinking I was going to game 150 at Hampden for me. It turns out it was only 149. And I was saying, well, at half time, if we get put out tonight, that's the last 2 times we've met each other. It's Rangers going out at home in Europe, and here we've done it again. So you can make up your mind which one is the jinx, if it's me or if it's Colin. But it was nice to talk to him at least tonight anyway. But I had it all worked out that Ademola Lookman scored that hat-trick for Atalanta in Dublin in the UEFA Cup final, and they playing blue and black and that. I mean, I'd seen Atalanta back in the 90s. I'd got them off my list of European finalists that I wanted to see in the flesh. They'd done it retrospectively. They just added themselves to a list after I'd seen them. And the last guy to score a hat-trick in the final of a European club final had been Jupp Heynckes against FC 20 Enschede back in the second leg, the away leg of the 1975 UEFA Cup final. We could have got them and Atalanta in the blue and black. And they're at Zuri, just like Inter. And Inter played in a few UEFA Cup finals, but they won it in 1994, beating SV Casino Austria Salzburg, as they were known then, who, it's a bit of a Wimbledon MK Dons situation, but they've now got the licence and they're known as Red Bull Salzburg. So I thought it's going to be either one of them. It's meant to be that we're going to play them, and we're going to one of them we're going to get ourselves into Champions League group stages. And Inter have already qualified for the Champions League group stages, and I'm putting up to the camera now. There you go. It's my ticket from 40 years ago. I framed so many of my European tickets. The first European game I ever went to was Inter on the 7th of November 1984 at Ibrox in the UEFA Cup, and Inter in the Champions League. I thought on the 6th of November this year would mark 40 years exactly of me watching Rangers in Europe. That would be the best way to do it. I had it all worked out. It's going to be a great celebration, and now it's going to probably be on, I think the 7th of November is a Thursday, so there's a good chance I could be at Ibrox that night, but it's probably going to be against, some Romanian side or something like that I haven't heard of. Real Sociedad, who I've seen, at Ibrox and in Madrid, at Fenerbahce, who I've seen before. It's going to be Braga, I think they're still having a chance of getting into the Europa League group stage. You can see them for the 15th time in the space of about 5 minutes. But we're still in Europe. That's one thing. The only thing I'd say, folks, I've talked far too much, I've talked far too slow, because I'm just devastated with this result tonight. There's no getting away from it. But the times I was most scared, it was even Celtic winning, consecutive trebles and all that. You hate it. It's no nice. It's a pain in the neck. You rather it wasn't happening. You want to do something to mess that up, and you're worried as they're coming for your records, things like that. But are setting their own new records. But you're not scared of them at that point in time. The only time I was scared of Celtic is when we're winning 9 in a row. And they can barely finish third in the league, and we're just ragdolling them all the time and kind of stamping on their throat. And still, the minute they sign a big player or a decent player, or they're playing against us, or they have a decent, they've got 40, 50,000 fans there straight away. They just, you're thinking, if this is as bad as ever going to get for them, and they're still there. We've been in the third division, and we had 40, 50,000 turning up at Ibrox every week. The crowd's starting to fade at Hampden, and I can't blame anybody for doing that. But I would say that the thing that really scares Celtic fans, and that's the whole thing. Football's now in a different stage from what it was in 83, 84 when Rangers were struggling to finish third and fourth in the top flight, and Aberdeen and Dundee United were winning like 4 leagues between them in the space of 5 years. The Champions League access means it's all about the size of support, anything you can do to kind of make up money. Money's been exploited much better now than it was back in those days. Your support's been exploited, been monetised much better than it was back then. So if you've got the Champions League money, you will get a situation where like Bayern Munich are winning the league, the Bundesliga 11, 12 years in the trot, and Juventus are doing the same thing with Serie A. Celtic are definitely doing the same thing in Scotland because they've got continual access to Champions League money. So a club like Rangers, our size, the coefficient of Scotland, we're in the Europa League, we're getting enough money, but it's to keep us second all the time. And it's a loop we've got to get out of, but it feels very much, right now, it feels like the mid-80s to me. A time where we didn't do very well in Europe, but we were always winning League Cups and Scottish Cups, always getting to cup finals and that, but we're struggling in the top flight. Getting beat at home by Aberdeen and Dundee United and that regularly was much worse than, we did well against Dundee United usually. It was much worse than finishing second, but constantly finishing second is not a good feeling. And we need to do something to break that, But as bad as things are, if Celtic fans think they're looking at it just now, that's why I'm talking about Celtic, not just because of the big rivalry between us, just because they're the only team above us. They're the only team I've got to get, but it's still a total bind. If they're looking at us and thinking it's still no breaking them, they're still turning out in their thousands or tens of thousands, even getting moved to Hampden, they're still, turning up 35, 40,000 of them every week. They'll know that we're not going anywhere, and we will be back. And we have to start things off by making sure we retain our League Cup. That'll be scintillating. Talk to you soon.